Hey guys, just a little preface on this one. I almost deleted this video rather than publish it, but I've decided to keep it. I finished the editing. It was pretty painful to watch the whole thing because I go into the ups and downs of my entire business journey since 2003-4. I've had other businesses. This is the only one that's been successful and lasted this long. But yeah, if you're looking for other stuff that's not business related, skip the video completely and watch the next one. But the theme of the channel is become a better version of yourself. So I think there's value in sharing the story to you guys, so you can see some of the obstacles that I came across and how I dealt with them. It's a pretty crazy ride. So I hope you enjoy this. Watch it through to the end and follow the instructions. Smash the like button at the end. And maybe I'll do more of these if you like it. Talk to you guys later. What is up, my brothers from another mother? So I've had a few requests from people asking me to do more business tip, entrepreneur tip type of videos. A lot of ambitious people out there that want to start a business or are struggling with a business. I've also done quite a few coaching calls in the last few months with people. So I think I'm going to do this to kind of bring you behind the scenes, to show you what it's like to own a business and what the ups and downs can typically be. This is called a timeline. I was first introduced to this about 7 or 8 years ago when I joined Entrepreneurs.org, because they put you in a forum, and when you're introduced to this forum, it's basically 8 to 10 other business owners in non-competing lines of work, and to help bring them into your world and show them what you're all about and some of the milestones in your life. These are basically milestones or / epochs. You timeline it, so you'll share your ups and downs in your own personal life to kind of help them get to understand and know you. So what we're going to do today is go into my personal timeline for my main business, which is Total Debt Freedom. There's also a YouTube channel which I've had up much longer than I've had Entrepreneurs in Cars. It's just Total Debt Freedom, and there's just tips on there about how to get out of debt, manage money, credit, and that sort of stuff. So I know a few of you have kind of looked at that business behind the scenes, because I've got private messages from you, but this is what's happened in that business since 2004 when I started it up. You can see there's a ton of ups and downs. So what I'll do is I'll break down for you what that looks like as an entrepreneur. Hopefully it'll give you a little more insight into me, my business, and some of the areas that I can help you with if you're looking for coaching calls to be booked and you want some more help dealing with something you're struggling with in your own business life. Let's get started. So around 2004, I left the collection world. I was given a package. I learned that people got hired because of the resume, but they got fired because of fit. And around 2003-ish, I had this VP, and we just butted heads. We just did not get along. I'm not going to get into it, but we just had a bad relationship. And when it came time to issue packages at the end of the year to help the profit and loss curve for the business, they usually get rid of management at somewhere, and I was the guy that got the axe. So it was a blessing in disguise. I went home. I took some time to really decide what I wanted to do. You guys know that I'm a petrol head. I like fast things. The initial thing I wanted to move into was something with motorsports and cars. It's very difficult to create a sustainable business that makes money and profit from an early stage where you don't burn cash. I looked at an indoor go-kart track and a few other things. But what ended up happening one day, I ran into a friend of mine, and this is kind of how most businesses launch. It's like, luck, opportunity, and preparation all kind of collide at the same point, and you're just in a position to go and do something. And for me, the luck was obviously that I had ran into the right people. I had the right experience, the preparation. And I had a guy that was talking to me about doing mortgages for his clients. He was an accountant. He was actually doing my taxes that year, and he basically said to me, hey, look, I know you come from the collection world. He showed me a credit report, and he says, look, I want to try to do a mortgage for these people. I can only get them a second mortgage for, I don't know, it's like $35,000, but they have almost 60 grand in debt. What can I do? I can't close a deal with this type of scenario. So I looked at it and I said, well, you can just settle the debt and make the deal fit. And I threw the credit report back to him, and he looks at it and he throws it back to me and he goes, good, go do it and charge a fee. So I did. So I wasn't working at the time. I was looking for my next big thing. And that one deal I basically did as a collaboration with him. I made a few $1,000s for a few weeks work, and I looked at it and I was like, wow, guy saved like over $30,000 on his bad debt, made the deal fit for a mortgage agent. So that worked, and I made some money. That seems to work. Let's see if we can create a business out of this. Even though I wasn't hugely passionate about credit cards, debt, helping people out with that area, I was passionate about the business idea, like the whole concept of being able to help somebody that was in debt. Because I'd come from a long line of about 10 or 11 years, I think it was, in the collection industry, where we were just working exclusively for the big banks and credit card companies and getting them their money back. And this was doing something on the other side of the fence that was more innovative. It was very agile. It was disruptive, which I liked. You know, I'm very big in the disruptive space, like basically beating a new path, and nobody else was doing this. So I basically created this new industry, which was called debt settlement in Canada. And around 2004, I think my first clients, I don't know what it is, but for some reason the name Magno or something like that rings a bell. I don't know if it was middle name, last name, or one of the creditors that they had, but this was the first person that actually gave my company directly money in exchange for services. And we had a board up on the wall. I was working from my dining room in my house, and I started, when checks started coming in, for some reason, you know, I was tracking the clients we were working and the amount of settlements that we were getting. And around the board, it was a big whiteboard like this, I would take a photocopy and put all the checks that would come in. And it was just a reminder that something was working. People were willing to exchange money for our services, and something was working there. It's really what it was. It was just an optical reminder that what you're doing works and there's value in it. So we carried on, and it did really well. You know, we had fast growth. By the way, what I'm talking about here with this scale over here, this is the timeline. So this is the year, and then up here, this is a plus 10, and this is a minus 10. So this would be the absolute best feeling. This would be the absolute worst feeling. So as the business grew, it took off. It started to work. We had fast growth, around a 5 or a 6. And then all of a sudden, we just kind of like started to tank because we were running into problems. We had issues over here with the company got notice from its first lawyer for a lawsuit. So for a few years we were operating, we were settling debt. We were basically working with the credit card companies and the banks to reduce somebody's debt burden based on their level of financial hardship. So it was a way for somebody to avoid bankruptcy. A lot of critics out there will be like, well, shouldn't you just pay your bills? The concept of settling debt has been around since the beginning of time. When a chicken farmer didn't have enough money to pay for the horseshoes for his horse, and the blacksmith said, fine, you can pay for 3 of the horseshoes with chickens and I'll let go of the 4th one and we'll call it a day, we'll call it even. So it's not like this is a new business or that it's immoral or wrong. It's something that we've been doing since the beginning of time. When we've run into financial hardship, we've negotiated a deal to get out of it. It's really not that much different than a bankruptcy or a consumer proposal. The only difference is you control the process, and it's a lot more private, confidential, and offers more flexibility with less damage to your credit. So for any of the haters out there, you can be like, oh, you should pay your bills. Just settle down for a minute and understand that people don't wake up in the morning and just go, right, I'm not going to pay my creditors. That's, you know, just sometimes we make bad choices, and it's okay. And, you know, bad things can happen to good people. So we're helping good people that bad things have happened to. And what happened here is because we were saving people so much money, the banks and credit card companies caught wind of it. And I was operating the business under a name at that time, which was TDF Group, because the company name was Total Debt Freedom. And I wanted to build a group of companies, maybe offering services like debt consolidation loan, mortgages, car loans, and that sort of thing. So I basically wanted to create this group of companies, but we started out with the concept of getting people out of credit card debt. So I call it TDF Group. Now, there's something called intellectual property law. And if the name of your business or logo looks similar to another business or logo, they have the right to sue you to take away that mark, because basically they think that you're writing off their good name, like you're writing off their brand or logo to help boost your business. And there's been cases of this in the past. You can look up intellectual property law, where, you know, some businesses have just been completely wiped out. For me at this time, it was 2 years in. It was a bank that had very, very few of you, if you're Canadian, will even know what bank this is. But there was a time here where we were like, you know what, it's just not worth fighting the fight. We don't need this name or website. And what I did was we basically settled that. It wasn't too difficult in hindsight, but at the time it was very stressful, lost sleep. You know, I thought to myself, how could these people be doing this to us? This is unfair and blah, blah, blah. So this was a fairly painful time. we managed to settle it out. All these things usually settle out of court whenever it comes to business law or corporate law, or there's any claims that arise, and it's usually frivolous. My feeling at the time was they were just, pissed off that we were saving people money, so they wanted to try to do something. But we let them have the website, we let them have everything. We rebranded the logo, the website moved over to totaldebtfreedom.ca, and it wasn't that big of a deal in hindsight. So I'm glad we kind of went through that early on at the startup phase. At the same time, we were working exclusively on paper folders. We were not dealing with software. We didn't have very much in the way of automation in the systems. It was basically me replicating what we had done in the early days with dealing with a mortgage agent that had a client with too much debt and not enough equity in their property, and we kind of made those things work. And this was kind of the run-up to what happened in the US as well around 2008 with the subprime mortgage crisis. So, the concept of dealing with people's debt through mortgage refinancing made a lot of sense. We had people that weren't paying us. I remember there was one guy who, I think he ripped us off for about $10,000 or $11,000 in fees, and we'd been working for months on this case, saved him like $70,000 or $80,000. I did a lot of the work myself. It was really, really depressing and exhausting to have that feeling of being ripped off for so much money for your time. And I think there was a couple of moments there where I thought, man, this just sucks. I'm not going to be able to afford to run this business. How am I going to do payroll? This guy owes me a ton of money. I can't sue him. He's a total criminal. And I just had to get over the fact that sometimes you're going to provide services for people and they're not going to pay you. But I needed to pivot and find a better way to run the business because I knew that it worked because people were giving us money. We had checks. It just so happened that one of the biggest deals that we were working on that consumed a lot of our time and resources completely ripped us off and walked away. And there was a flaw in the system. So what I did was I went looking for solutions, as I always do. And I found that software was going to be the solution for us because it would allow us to take service fees over time or trust deposits from people before we would do any work, so we didn't get screwed over. So fast forward about 6-7 months, and as I'm incorporating the software into the business, I start running into problems with two of my employees. One of them was my best friend. Another one was, I guess, a girl he was dating that worked for me as well. And I only had 4 people in the business at the time. It was me, my youngest brother, who had just joined because he was interested in what we were doing and wanted to participate in the growth. He had an entrepreneurial vein in him, and a couple other people. And what ended up happening was some very bad things happened. This was my best friend for 15 years, and he basically, chose money over the friendship. And without getting into disparaging remarks, there was another lawsuit that happened. It was also settled. I was satisfied with the outcome. We went our separate ways and we haven't spoken since. So this is something that can happen in business, folks. When you get into business with, blood is thicker than water. So if you do it with family, that would be my recommendation. The thing that I've seen over and over again with friendships and entrepreneurial journeys and partnerships, a good deal of them can go sideways just because money changes things. When a business starts to make money and it throws off money, and there's 2 people involved, there's some entitlement issues. There's a whole bunch of things that can happen around that I can make it probably an entire video on, but I kind of want to move forward through this so I can explain to you what this timeline looks like. So we settled that. That took a number of months, lots of sleepless nights, lots of stress, a good deal of misdirection. I wasn't focused on the business. It wasn't making money. And when we settled it, things just started to just skyrocket, take off, because I had this reinvigorated energy of just wanting to prove myself, I guess. And nothing is better than demonstrating to people that thought that you were a fool or useless or didn't have the skills when you go and blow the doors off things. And the business grew exponentially. We had the software working. We hired a few new people that worked out very well. I was recognized on the Profit 50 of Canada's fastest growing companies, and the Profit 50 again a year later, and the Profit 100, the Profit 200 was nominated for Ernst & Young's Entrepreneur of the Year. We had massive growth. This was hyper growth. I'm talking close to 1,000%. And things went very, very well. We had great systems. Our marketing systems were working very well. It was around this time that I started using pay-per-click advertising. which worked out phenomenally. The cost was exponentially lower than what it is today. And we just had this massive growth. And we grew the company to about 24 employees. I hired a business coach around this time. He helped me out with company culture. We did some amazing things. If you take a look at the TDF, or the Total Debt Freedom YouTube channel, I'll post in the low bar maybe some videos from the company culture stuff that we did. We were having client appreciation days. The state of the office was just crazy. If you've ever heard of walkthroughs around companies like Zappos or Southwest Airlines or I Love Rewards, I went on a mission at this time because I hated the collection world that I came from. I went on a mission at this time when the company had grown so well and been doing so well, and we had almost 25 employees working for us, to really focus on making the place a better place to be for my staff so they could get better results for our client. We use things like Net Promoter Score, where we would survey our clients on a regular basis, and then we would distribute profits from the company to our employees. So it was an amazing time. Because we had such exponential growth and we did so well, we started to shine spotlight on ourselves. We obviously got recognized for growth on publications. We were covered in the media. In 2009, we were on the front page of the business section on the Toronto Star because of these publications publishing our super hyper growth. So people started recognizing, hey, this is an interesting business. Maybe we might want to do this. I had people knocking on my door on a regular basis, wanting to partner and wanted to learn what we do. And I was fairly transparent with how we work and why we do what we do. Now, this is when competitors started to show up. It also coincidentally happens to be around the same time. It was a couple of years after the US subprime crisis that crashed the housing market, and the US economy started to tank, and the Canadian dollar ended up being around parity with the US dollar. It was good for me personally because, I had all this growth. I had a great personal life. I built a custom home, bought my first success ride. I bought a nice 2000, well, it was used, it was a 2003 nice red convertible BMW. And it was around this time competitors started to show up and doing things that were not very nice. Let's just say they didn't really know what they were doing. They were looking for a quick buck, the majority of them. There's only a handful of them that were up and on the ethical end and operating close to the same level that we were. Now, also because the Canadian dollar was on par, we had American companies that were looking to do business in Canada. And during this time over here, the US government basically changed the way debt settlement could work in the US. They didn't limit the fee. What they did was they prohibited when they could collect the fee, so they delayed it. So a lot of these companies said, oh, dollar's on par. If we operate in Canada, it's like $1 US is $1 Canadian dollar, so it makes sense. Whereas in the past over here, there was like a 25-cent discount on every dollar. Around here, it was working out on parity. So all these American companies started advertising in Canada. They started making promises that they couldn't deliver on. They would hire big Canadian. They came in with bucks deluxe. And what they did was they overpromised and underdelivered, and a lot of people were disappointed and did not get the results they were expecting. They also put a lot of attention on the industry, and kind of what happened over here with me and one credit card company happened to the entire industry. Banks and credit card companies got pissed off that there were people that were saving money to get out of debt. Again, it's not that much different from bankruptcy. It's just more of a private approach to helping somebody that's stuck in financial hardship. Things went downhill very, very quickly. They started throwing huge amounts of money at media advertising on television, on radio. I remember I was sitting, it was around this time here, I was sitting in the parking lot with my daughter in the car. I think my ex-wife at the time was doing some grocery shopping, and the radio was on, and this big ad comes on the radio like, "Attention Canadians, there's a new government program that can help you reduce your debt by as much as 70% over 3 years. There's limited space, call us now, boom, 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 here's a number." And it was a very compelling offer, but it was a lie. It wasn't true. There was no government program. They were making statements and promises that just weren't accurate. And that really threw the entire industry into a tailspin, which is where we arrived at over here. Now, by this time, I had run out a lot of options. We were no longer as profitable anymore. The company culture started to suffer. My focus was taken away from providing top shelf service to our clients and delivering a great workspace and environment for my staff here, to all the way down over here where I was answering another lawsuit from one of the American competitors because I had written some blogs exposing a lot of the lies that they were purporting on radio and television. Because, you know, it's like being in the same room and you've got criminals and cons in the same room. You look bad. So the only way that I could differentiate myself from the bad apples was to basically point to the facts and let people decide for themselves. Now, there's nothing wrong with pointing to the facts publicly. The problem is that they can claim that they're disparaging remarks and that it hurts their business. So that's what happens in business quite often. When there's competition, when somebody doesn't like something that you're doing, they'll go and throw lawyers at you. And because these were American companies, they're fairly litigious. They had deep pockets and resources. So they came at us with all guns blazing. Now, the interesting thing was this downturn happened for basically, you know, late 2010 into 2013-ish, 14-ish. So there's a span of about 4 years where things were not going well. I was going through a divorce at this time. I was answering a lawsuit from a competitor. My industry was under a lot of pressure. Credit card companies and banks and bankruptcy trustees and credit counselors and the nonprofit groups, they were all trying to shut us down. They started lobbying the government to change the legislation so that our fee would either be reduced or delayed. And they were eventually successful in both, actually. Around here, I just gotten out of the divorce. I started dating a single mom, totally different story. You can check a video out on that on my channel. And we started lobbying. So we settled this lawsuit actually here. And what happened was we created a trade organization to try to lobby the Ontario government where the legislation was going to change things. It was called Bill 55. And this was my exposure to dealing with bureaucrats, politicians, and different political parties. In Canada, we've got NDP, the New Democrat Party, which is very socialist, Liberals, which, you know, everybody's familiar with the liberal policies pretty much worldwide, and conservative parties. And we would go down to Queen's Park, which is where the Ontario government was, and speak to all these politicians and bureaucrats about why the legislation that was being introduced by the banks that was killing off the industry was a bad idea for the consumer and how it was going to cost them more money going forward in the future. So we did that for a couple of years, spent about $50,000 in lobbying fees. It was terribly exhausting at a time in my life where I had taken a huge dive, had a terrible divorce, started dating a single mom, was having a bad experience with that. And all of a sudden I started to feel hope. I started to feel hope, like something good was going to happen out of it, that the politicians and the bureaucrats would side with what's right and that good would prevail over evil and that they would side with the consumer and what's best for them versus the bank profits. It's funny because the lobbyists and some of the politicians at some point started to recognize the truth. They had taken the red pill and started to see the truth, and they saw that the new laws that the banks, credit card companies, the competitors from Canada, the nonprofit groups that were being introduced were really about protection of profits for the big credit card companies and banks. We'll just leave it at that. So I saw hope. And then we saw the legislation, after about a couple of years of lobbying, finally released, and we tanked again because all the legislation that was written, they adopted none of the suggestions or recommendations that we made, and instead they sided with profits to the bank. Now, I don't know if, you know, the credit card companies and the banks had greased their back pockets behind the scenes. I have no idea, but you have to come to a point in life where you recognize, you know, there's only so much that you can do, and you need to accept defeat. You know, there's battles that you can take on, and we took on some here and some here, some here. You know, there's battles that you can take on in life, and there's some where you just have to let things go. Now, fortunately, around 2015, a couple of years ago, again, you know, this is a neutral line, so this is zero. So there was a good period of time where things really hurt. I think I set up Entrepreneurs in Cars around 2015 because I was so discouraged with what was happening in my business life. I wanted to do something that recharged me, that provided some level of satisfaction. So I started creating videos for, you know, the YouTube audience on cars, entrepreneurship, becoming a better version of yourself, some red pill stuff, you know, dating advice and stuff like that. So it was around 2015 that I started doing that. But back to the business. So we saw we saw hope. It crashed. We saw the new legislation, which is terrible. A lot of the businesses basically just collapsed. Now, by this time, the US dollar was no longer on par, and there was about a 25% discount on the Canadian dollar to the US, so American companies just disappeared. It wasn't worth their while. The legislation was not friendly to them. There was a massive delay in the fee and about a 1/3 reduction in the fee, which made it completely cost prohibitive. So even if the Canadian US dollar was still on par, it would still not make any sense. But this legislative change completely wiped out 98% of the players that were doing what we were doing. The stuff that I started back in 2003 and 4 that grew so successfully, they just folded up. They just shut down. There's probably about a couple thousand people that lost their jobs. So around 2014, 2015, we launched a brand new model. There was one exemption in the legislation that allowed us to push forward by basically creating a new business with involvement with a lawyer and paralegal and licensed legal professionals. So it was a very difficult transition, cost a lot of time and money. It also cost the consumer more money. This is something that we warned the bureaucrats and politicians about, because the fee had to increase to involve licensed legal professionals. So we launched a brand new model around, I think it was July 1st, 2015. And I, again, started to feel a little bit of hope. You know, again, this is 0 down to -10, so around the equivalent of a -8. So things started to feel like, okay, we got rid of the trash, this is behind us. You know, the legislation's in place, let's keep going forward and do this. Only I didn't have any energy to do it. I had nothing left in the gas tank. I really kind of resented the banks, credit card companies, the politicians, the bureaucrats, the 50 grand that I spent in lobbying fees, all the efforts that I had, you know, thrown at it and gotten nothing back in return. And, you know, there's just so much, I guess, resentment and guilt on my part. And those are the two most negative emotions you can have in life as an entrepreneur in business. You know, resentment's towards, you know, an outside source, and guilt is towards yourself. And I was really carrying those around in buckets. And I was in no place to run a business, and I needed to kind of take a bit of a sabbatical. What also happening was our lease was up in our Markham office, and I let my management team move the office about an hour away from where I live. And I basically checked out, and I said, look, I'll sign in every couple of days. I'll coach you guys on you know, things that need to be improved, or give you some tips on some things that need to be worked on and solve problems. But I need you guys to run the business right now. I'm going to check out for a little bit. I'll oversee it from a distance. I'll come in once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks I would come in, spend some time in the office, and then let them run things. So we had around 9 or 10 staff at this time. And what ended up happening was nothing really happened. When I checked out of the business, it didn't run very well. It started to lose money. It wasn't profitable. The new model, my salespeople found hard to sell. I got a lot of excuses instead of results. You know, I always say in life, you know, you'll either find a way to make it happen, or you'll find an excuse as to why it didn't happen. And even though there was a restructure to the entire business, fundamentally what we did was still the same. We just had to operate as licensed legal professionals. So we had a massive contraction in the business. It was around this point that I also took the biggest pay drop in my life. I was the lowest paid employee in the office, and there was even a period of time where I took no pay. But my staff contracted, people were not performing. The sales team were unable to sell the new program as they sold the old one. They ran into all kinds of roadblocks, obstacles, you know, any number of reasons, but there was a lot of excuses made as to why things weren't able to work. Now, at some point over the course of this year, because of the stress that was happening on my main leader in the office, he had resigned after about 8 or 9 months of basically running the business for me. Couldn't hack it, business was falling apart, and he ended up finding a job somewhere else, which was cool. It was actually the best thing that ever happened to me in the last, since 2007, 8, 9. It was definitely the best thing that happened to me, because look at what happens next. I actually started shopping around for a new number one person, a new VP. and I couldn't find anybody that I felt confident enough that was going to be able to do something like this again. Okay, so I decided to reinvigorate myself, get re-involved in the business. And the interesting thing that happened around this time, it was late 2016, it was around September of last year. An interesting thing happened when I made this independent choice of stop being a victim, stop blaming everybody else, for my results, and stop making excuses and take full ownership. And I've talked about this in my videos in the past, kind of around here. And I wasn't practicing what I was preaching. I wasn't doing it in my own fucking business. And I felt like I needed to do it. During this time, I tasked my leadership with things that I felt like were going to reinvigorate and launch the business. Things like creating email marketing campaigns and funnels and new lead structures. And we just kept doing the same thing that was always done. They never innovated or adopted any of the policies and procedures that I had recommended. Instead, it just kept skipping across the bottom, as you can see. It never had a very good hard launch and spike again. So I was left with a problem here. I had nobody as a number one in command, and I needed to do something. So I just said to myself, you know what, fuck it. You've had enough of a break. You've been a basic bitch.
You're a basic bitch.
For too long. Go back in the business and do something to fix it and prove that this business model is viable, that it does work. And it's been running for, almost 15 years now. It's close to 15 years. This is what success looks like. It looks like a freaking roller coaster ride. It's never a straight line up. There's all kinds of challenges. Anybody that's been in business can relate to this. Some people don't make it this far. Some people make it a lot further. I'm excited for the new chapter and what happens. Since September, costs have been contained. Payroll's working properly. I've hired new people. I've gotten rid of people that don't fit the business model where we're going forward. Profits have returned. I've reinvigorated, the sales and marketing, which is the biggest cost center in the type of business that we run, and figured out ways to actually make things work profitably while delivering even greater and better results. Automating systems and outsourcing systems and simplifying systems and doing what I do best as an entrepreneur, which is basically look for the best ways to make things work and then bring them into the business. R&D, I've talked about this before, probably in other videos. R&D doesn't stand for research and development, it stands for rip off and duplicate. And during this time, I've implemented so many systems to this new business model, which happened around, so the company basically turned into a new company around this time here, 2015. It was around here. And I'm very pleased to say that we're finally, I'm finally feeling positive again. I'm finally optimistic once again for the outcome. And I think if you were to ask my staff, they'd probably echo that and be stoked. I've reintroduced incentives and bonus plans that will help them do a better job, make more money, and they'll be rewarded for doing a much better job. And I guess that's where we're at today. So let me just put it to you this way. If you guys are interested in learning more about business and entrepreneurship, one, you can book a coaching call with me on clarity.fm, and you can do a one-on-one coaching. Don't email me your questions. You can email me a topic suggestion if you want, or leave it in the comments below, but don't email me your questions because I'm not able to respond and provide coaching by email. You're going to need to book my time if you want it. And the second thing is, I was actually contemplating the idea of continuing this story here, this dialogue. Many of you seem interested in, business and what I do for a living and kind of like the background story behind it. So I don't know, would you be interested in me doing a weekly or bi-weekly kind of vlog, kind of behind the scenes, what happens in the business, what went well, what didn't go well, what I got stuck on, how I solved it. I think it'll shed a lot more light on entrepreneurship and lift the fog or the veil around it so people can see what it's truly like. Because you get a lot of entrepreneurs out there that, on the surface seem like they're doing awesome, but they don't authentically and transparently tell the full story. So if you're interested, smash the like button. Tell you what, if I get 1,000 likes on this video, I'll start vlogging what happens behind the scenes in my business. So smash the like button, leave a comment below. Of course, subscribe if this is one of the first videos you see, and browse the rest of the channel and the playlist on business stuff if you want. Happy to take topic suggestions, of course, at any given time. And if you need one-on-one coaching, links up there.
book it with me. Happy to chat. Hope you guys have an amazing day. We'll talk to you guys later. Peace.